can't begin, even to myself, trying to explain humility. How humble you and I should be for this grace given. How humble you should be. I sat with a client this morning, and I did a very nice, maybe I can reflect on that since humility came up. I did an exercise for him, which I call letter to an important other, or from an important other. Now, how this process worked is that my client gave me 6 email addresses and names of people that he would like feedback from. And then I administer it from my office, where I sent to these 6 people a letter. It's not a letter, it's more like questions that the person that has been nominated should answer about my client. Things like, what is the purpose of my life? The letter is structured in such a way that it's as if my client asked this person that he trusts to give him feedback. And it's also in the instructions described like that. So questions like, what do you think is my purpose in life? Or what do I mean to people? Or what do people learn from me? Or what do you think is my values? Stuff like that. And then they start to write, and they send it back to me, and now me and my client, we go and sit down, and I start to read to him the letters. So there's a segment on just answering questions, then there's a segment on just completing incompleted sentences, and then there's a segment where they need to write a paragraph thanking my client for something. So we go through that. And one of the things that one person gave feedback on my client was, you're a very down-to-earth person. I think it was 5 of the descriptive words, because that is one of the questions. What 5 words would describe me? My client, as if my client is asking this person. And one of the words is down-to-earth. And this person is really down-to-earth. And then it popped into my head, and I said, you know what? I think the angels bow before you. He says, why do you say that? And I had this long story explaining to him in Final Quest, where these people fought up the mountain against this evil forces to save people that need to come up on the mountain. And then eventually in this battle, they ended up on the top of the mountain in a garden where they met with God. And then eventually after the meeting, they had to go back because more people need to be brought onto the mountain, and they're saved from this evil. And at one point in time, he was standing and he was watching how some of the people that went up the mountain, being in the garden with him, they were led into a Hunderlaag ambush. And where he was standing, he wanted to warn them, he shouted to them, and he became aware of an angel standing next to him, and he said to the angel, started having a conversation. The angel's name is Wisdom. Early in the book, I think he had a conversation with Wisdom, and Wisdom told him, all of you people have been assigned an angel that journey with you depending on your purpose in life. Some people have an angel of courage. Some people have an angel of there are many things. Whatever the purpose of the person is, the angel is applicable and congruent to that purpose. And for his purpose, he needed wisdom to journey with him. And those people were led into the ambush, and he and Wisdom started a conversation. And he said, what was that? And Wisdom said, no, they were led into an ambush. And in one point in time in the conversation, he asked, but couldn't they see it? He says, no, they can't see it. Because the armor that you carry, and they carry armor, apparently a shield and a sword, got a helmet on, they got a breastplate on, everything, and this armor is magnificent, glorious. And he said to Wisdom, can it be prevented? Wisdom says, yes, it can be prevented. He says, in what way? And Wisdom took out a very ugly, old, drabby-looking cloak, and he threw it over him, and the moment he did that, all the glistening and the glamour of the armor just went away. And he was sort of uncomfortable with this cloak. He said, what cloak is this? He says, no, this cloak is the cloak of humility. It's the only thing that will ever prevent you from being led into an ambush by the enemy. Now, as I'm sitting with my client there, I told him the story, and I said to him, actually, you know why I think the angels bow before you? 2 Sundays ago, I was standing at a friend, and he had this book. I read this book about 20 years ago. I picked it up, opened it, and where I read, it was this guy, Rick Joyner, having a conversation with wisdom again, in the page that I just randomly opened up on. And he had this conversation with the wisdom, asking, why do the angels bow before me? And I think wisdom said something of the sort, not because of who you are, but because of you wearing the cloak of humility. They bow before everyone that wears a cloak of humility. And I brought the story back to my client. I say, that's why I said the angels bow before you. It's a long story to explain something fundamental to my client. But that same principle, the same thing, humility, is something that can protect you, that can help you. If you're a recursive thinker, it's actually a result. It's actually something that grows on people that think recursively. There's some kind of humility in them because they realize there are so many things at play. There are so many things so much bigger than themselves that they can never get to a state where they exalt themselves in any way or think of themselves more highly than who they really are, because of being a recursive thinker, a cyclical thinker. You realize whatever you put out there will return back to you. Whatever you say about your client is actually saying more about you. Whenever you think the problem is out there, that thought that you used to think about the problem is the problem. And there's some sense of humility that needs to be bred, and often does, or bred into people that think recursively. Because one might find this and even think, when you encounter it the first time, Eureka, Eureka. And you run naked down the street and you say, I found it, now I've got something that you don't have. And hopefully humility will hit you very hard at some point in time. If it be through an ambush or if it be through grace. Because just to tag onto my little story here, there's a second book on the final quest called The Call. I just want to complete this circle because it's a good story to hear. In The Call, Rick is again talking to wisdom. And he became self-conscious. Because now he's wearing, still in the second book, he's still wearing the cloak of humility. Very drabby, old, ugly-looking cloak. And he thought to himself, and wisdom was approaching him, and he thought to himself, I don't want to be in the presence of wisdom in such glory, because wisdom is like magnificent, with this drabby old thing. And he peeks into underneath the cloak of humility. And this glistening armor of him just shone right into his face. But it was a blinding light. But as wisdom is approaching, wisdom says, I would like to teach you something. But now he's battling, having some kind of inner conflict with himself. He can't be in the presence of this magnificence with this ugly cloak. And he decided to pull off the cloak. And the moment he did that, the glistening glamour of the armor blinded him completely. Couldn't see. He got nervous, got scared, started shouting, what's going on? Please help me, I'm blind, I'm blind. Wisdom says, just put back the cloak, put back the cloak. So he puts the cloak back on. But it's, like when you look into the sun, you can't see after that. He was still having that. And it took long before his sight returned. And when the sight returned, he said, oh yeah, you wanted to teach me something. And wisdom remarked and said, I cannot teach you this anymore. Because you have to wear the cloak of humility to hear what I wanted to teach you. But God will give you grace so that your enemies will teach you this. for me in that moment, I realized we have options, we have choices. Who will teach us? Will it be wisdom? And then you have to have the cloak of humility? Or will it be your enemies? And they will teach you.